I would like to begin this episode by acknowledging that I am located in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and I am privileged and honored to live and learn on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishnaabeg Algonquin Nation.
Hello, you're listening to Trench Leadership, a podcast from the front, produced by iGlen Studios, a show for emerging leaders from all professions. To hear from other leaders who have led from the front, made the mistakes, had the triumphs, and are still learning along the way. And now, here's your host, Simon Cardinal.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trench Leadership, a podcast from the front. Often, emerging leaders are thrust into leadership roles because of their proven technical skills. But technical prowess does not guarantee leadership skills. And this challenge is made all the more difficult because we are experts in the field. So there is an expectation to be able to easily lead. But what do we do when we aren't the expert and we're still expected to lead? In this episode, you'll hear from Dr. Will Bralick, the founding president and CEO of a software consulting practice, Paladin Logic Limited, and an educator, coach in software project leadership. Dr. Will offer advice and practical tools to help emerging leaders define, identify, and see what we don't know, giving leaders the capability to be more effective much more quickly. Now, before we get into it, I would like to do a visual representation just so folks can have an idea in their heads of what things look like. For myself, I have my regular screenshot of the fake stone wall with the Trench Leadership logo hanging behind me, and it's highlighted with white and purple. I have a dark blue sweater on. I have my black rimmed glasses. I'm a Caucasian male. My hair is still far too gray on the sides, and I have the microphone in front of me. Dr. Will Bralick is wearing a very nice black suit. He's in his office. He's got looks like a whiteboard in the background. The walls are beige. He's also a Caucasian male. He's got a nice goatee beard going on there, and he's got a fantastic photo. It looks like of some type of forest in the background.
It's an oak grove.
Oh, it's an oak grove. There we go. And the walls are beige, if I hadn't mentioned that already. But really, let's get to the meat of it. No one wants to hear from me. They want to hear from the guests. So I'm just going to try and be quiet and introduce Dr. Will. Hey, Dr. Will Bralick, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you doing, Simon?
I'm doing very, very well. I'm excited to be able to record this episode with you. I'm very thrilled that someone reached out and connected us. We're going to be talking about something that I believe is truly unique. And that's what happens when that leader doesn't know anything about the technical skill set that they're expected to lead by. Before we get into that, do you mind taking a moment and telling us about your journey and a little bit how ultimately you got to this point?
Sure. It's a long story because of my age, but I'll try to keep it kind of reasonable length here. Began in I was born at an early age, but skipping ahead a bit, I joined the Air Force.
I was drinking coffee when you said that. You totally got me. Well done.
That's how I roll, So anyway, I joined the United States Air Force in 73, so right at the tail end of Vietnam, and went to training to become a Russian linguist. That's where I met and married my wife of now 49 years, in the Russian language program there in Monterey, California. Anyway, so we served 4 years enlisted service as a Russian linguist, doing a tour of duty in Turkey, and then got out, went to school, got my bachelor's degree, and then went into computer science. And back in the Air Force as an officer for the next 16 years, I earned my master's and PhD degrees in computer science, wherein I built large systems and taught software engineering for the Air Force and the Navy, as a matter of fact. So got out and I took a job at Texas Instruments, worked on the Boeing Joint Strike Fighter. Electro-optics part was very cool kind of thing. And then took over a consulting practice for big iron Unix kind of systems in Dallas, where I presently live. So after that, I went to work at Club Corp and was the software architect on a large system. That was about 20 years ago, and that system is still in use today. So it's one of those kind of very encouraging and cool things when you check in and discover that yes, they're still using the software that you spent time on building. So after that, I got a job with one of the people I go to church with, as a matter of fact, where we worked on test chips for Texas Instruments, and then formed my own company. Finally, that's where I get to the kind of the tail end of the journey here. Formed my own company from that company, and we do software consulting now on ERP systems. And I've recently branched out into my own consulting and coaching practice after I wrote my book. So that's how we got here. So, and here we are.
I love that. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm quite confident you cut out a whole bunch of stuff in there. And thank you for hitting those highlights. Do you want to tell us about your book a little bit really quickly?
Sure. It's called What You Don't Know. It's I had a conversation with some SaaS, software as a service founders, non-technical software as a service founders. And we had a conversation about what they don't know. And they were non-technical, so they were building a software system, and they didn't know what was involved in building software. They hired people, as they were kind of told to do, but they still didn't know what was entailed in actually building, producing, sustaining, and managing that software system and software project. So the subtitle to the book is how to successfully lead a software project even without tech expertise. So that's the idea there. I kind of took that experience because I spent a lot of time coaching those founders, and generated the book from that. There are a lot of people who don't who in the software business, because there's such a shortage of folks in the business, and a lot of the technical people in the business have no interest in doing any kind of management. So they want to stay technical. They want to stay in the trenches, if you will. So so you end up often hiring non-technical people to lead those kind of software projects. And these are either SaaS, non-technical SaaS founders. They are managers, middle managers who have divisions of companies or government institutions that have software being built, custom built for them, or they're business owners who have large-scale software systems like ERP solutions, enterprise resource planning type solutions that are being customized and developed and sustained for them. And they have no idea of what the complexity is of what they're getting into.
Well, it's interesting you talk about that. And I think about my first time that when I was in the Canadian Air Force, the Royal Canadian Air Force, as we call it. And my trade was called aircraft structures technician. And people who've listened know about this, but it is very, 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 very loosely like auto body for airplanes. And we later on over a drink, we could talk about how the trade came about. It's a sidebar for the podcast. But in respect to this particular episode, what happened was I had been, as an ACS tech, I had been working in Greenwood, Nova Scotia, which was far on the East Coast, working on completely different platforms. And I got posted once. And then my first promotion to an actual formalized leadership role is called Master Corporal in the Canadian Air Force. Mm-hmm. And I was placed in charge of a team of 2 other people. And these 2 guys happened to be 2 men, and they had combined, they had something like 45 years experience on the CF-18, so the fighter jet. Right. And I literally had the amount of time in the jet from me walking from the parking lot into the hangar. That was it. And I was expected to lead these guys.
Right.
And I knew nothing about it. So how am I going to lead this team? And I knew nothing about the jet. I remember being surprised how dirty the jet was and how big the jet was. And they're talking to me about we're performing structural repairs on this aircraft, the supersonic aircraft. So I was very much out of my league, but still expected to lead that team. And that's why I'm so excited about this particular episode. Is that's what a lot of leaders find themselves in charge of something that they know nothing about, and it's intimidating. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's scary. Oh, it's scary. It's one of those moments that I guess you live for, right? You've got to. It's like. Back in the day, we had I don't know if you're old enough to recall this, but there used to be a thing called the DEW line, the DEW, the Distant Early Warning Line, that was in Canada, staffed by Canadian and American military. which was watching with radar to see what's coming over the horizon. That's before we had the over the horizon backscatter radar and things like that kind of broke the back of the Soviet war machine in the Reagan administration. Anyway, the point is that you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's over the horizon. You can't see. You don't know what technical problems people are going to experience. You don't know why, if they're having difficulty, why that's a difficulty. There was a time, as a matter of fact, during the Vietnam War, there was one problem that was discussed. The commander of a brigade or whatever would often be in a helicopter looking down on an operation going on in the jungle, and they would say things like, well, team A, go from where you're at to over there, wherever. And what they don't know from the air is that there's hedgerow between here and there. There are obstacles that just make it completely impossible to get from here to there. So they're trying to make those command decisions from the air and from a position of observation where they really don't understand what the situation is on the ground. That's where the leader who's been put in charge of a group of people that are much more experienced than them have to begin with what Josh Waitzkin, for example, in his book about learning calls a beginner's mind. You have to kind of submerge your ego a little bit and realize that those people know a lot more about things than you do, and your job is to set the objectives for them and trust and verify that they will achieve those objectives. But you have to rely on their expertise, and all the while you're learning. And if you're lucky, if you're fortunate, you have other experience in your background that's different from theirs that you can apply to what they're doing. And that's where you actually can get some very effective teams from this cross-fertilization of different branches of knowledge. And that's the sort of thing that can actually make a team much more effective than if you had just somebody who'd always been doing that work and got promoted into the leadership position. And then they're all in the same kind of mindset, and they're all in the same kind of idiom, and they all solve the problems the same way. There's no kind of different solution that comes suggesting itself.
Well, and by bringing in new people, it brings in new ideas and new perspectives to look at things. And I'm not suggesting that someone coming in needs to reinvent the wheel, or how many times were you in the military? Did you see the new lieutenant come in or the new sergeant or whatnot? And I'm going to do all this to change the world because I've been here for 5 minutes and I know the way things need to be. And those people, my experiences have been, there's two types of people that are doing that. There's a type of person that's just coming in like a bull in a china shop, and they just want to make changes because they think they know the way to do it. Mm-hmm. Or there's the other type of person who's doing that because they realize that there's a couple of different points on the promotion system and leading change and taking initiative are big points to help a person get promoted. So they're making change to help further their own goals. Neither of which are generally overly effective and ultimately end up in a lot more chaos and disgruntled people.
Right. And that's when I was an enlisted troop for 4 years and got out, went to school, and I went back in the Air Force. And when I went back in the Air Force, so as a second lieutenant, I wore all my ribbons from my enlisted service. And that was basically a reminder to all the tech sergeants in the American military, the staff sergeants, tech sergeants, people with mid-grade kind of NCOs that have been around the block. I'm not just a brand new butter bar coming in with no knowledge whatsoever, although they knew their stuff much better than I knew because I was just learning their mission, the first real job I had in the Air Force. So, and that was another one. That was an opportunity where I could learn some very interesting, very cool things that I can't tell you about. but the very cool and interesting things that they knew a lot about, and then I grew and learned and was able to apply my expertise in computer science to help them accomplish the mission.
Well, and it's interesting, like you say, you brought in that information, or by putting the ribbons on as a sign to show others that this wasn't your first day in the rodeo. For myself, I started in the infantry and in the Canadian military. I don't know what it's like for the U.S. military, but that fact that I spent that 5 years in that infantry time, that gave me a whole lot of street cred that I didn't necessarily. I still don't understand why. Well, that's not true. That's not true at all. I know why I'm getting that street cred, but I spent 21 years in the regular force in the Air Force and 5 in the infantry. So, but that 5 years of infantry time, that gave me a whole bunch more credibility when I was talking about why we need to go do things, just because I was in the infantry and that's kind of what they're famous for. So that was quite helpful. But at the same token, I couldn't use that all the time. It was a weird balance to find, especially on a hard Air Force base like the fighter unit I was in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, but I found that people that had experience in the military, whether they were, former, Air Force or Army, their Marine Corps, they might have been Navy, just the fact that they weren't just raw civilians coming in, and they understood the military ethos and all of that. I think that's a huge difference that makes all the difference. That's why the civilian college graduate who goes through officer training school 90 days and then comes and tries to tell the grizzled sergeant, of who's been in for 20 years how life is and all. It's like, it just doesn't cut it. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to see those folks come in and guns blazing. Yeah, the smile and the laugh. I love it. We could, after this, we should share some stories. I'm sure it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In the concept of what we're talking about with not knowing what you're talking about, I'd also like to throw out there that in the Canadian Air Force and some of the Canadian Army trades do this as well. When we get to the rank of warrant officer, so we have 5 aircraft maintenance trades. And when we get to the rank of warrant officer, all of these trades become, you get amalgamated, you become a new trade, what's called aircraft maintenance superintendent. Right. And then you just stay that trade until you become a chief warrant officer. And then it's a whole different trade, whatever.
Right.
But for the point of this is what's interesting about that is the reasoning is that even as a senior non-commissioned officer, I can be in charge of someone who was not in charge of, I was not in my trade. So as an ACS tech, I could, and it happened to me, I was in charge of air weapons technicians and aviation systems technicians because I don't need to be an expert in that field anymore. I need to know how to do personnel management. That like it or not, I'm an administrator now. They don't even want me on the floor. I'm more of a pain in the rear end than anything else. So, it's about personnel administration and HR functions. And I think that's an important thing to point out, not the HR functions, but just to remember that at some point in time, you're going to be in a position where your expertise is shifted from that tactical level to the strategic level and understanding that. But as a new leader, it's also okay to remember there is not an expectation to know everything at all the time right in the beginning. That's huge. Right. Does that make sense?
That does, and you don't have to, or nor should you make all the decisions. In my own field of computer science and software engineering and that sort of thing, back in the day, we had the concept of egoless programming, and then the idea there is that you are not your code. And evaluating the code or evaluating the job, whatever it is not evaluating the person per se. It's a more objective than that. You see that, and what you were just describing was a situation where, irrespective of what subsystem you were an expert on, when you graduate, if you will, when you get promoted to a certain level, you're, like you said, you're not expected to have expertise in all of the areas of all the technical areas. Nobody has time to do that, right? So but you're in a leadership position. You're required to understand how those subsystems work together. That's actually the area where I did my PhD research was on what's called systems of systems, what's now called systems of systems. And large scale systems like aircraft computer systems, businesses, governments. These are all systems of systems that interact with other systems, and the complexity is mind-blowing. It's exponential. So that is why we build hierarchies. It's why we structure organizations in hierarchies, so that you limit the scope of things you have to make decisions about. And as you kind of go up that chain of what we call this chain of command, right?
Yeah,
I
still love calling it that. Yeah.
Yeah, I still straighten my gig line too, when I get dressed.
I still have a tendency to call people subordinates, and I get dirty looks for that.
Ooh, ouch. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Total
So,
sidebar. Sorry about that.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I think one of the things that, in terms of people, going up levels of organizations, one of the things that attracted me to being an entrepreneur is that my organization happens to be pretty small, but both my companies are pretty small, but that's kind of nice, because it's small, it's intimate, and things like that. You get into a large organization, and you find people that are moving up the ladder to move up the ladder in order to make more money and things like that. Way back when, we used to there was a concept called the Peter Principle, and that was in a large organization anyway. People tend to the Peter Principle is people tend to rise to their level of incompetence and then stay there. And the point is that people would get promoted when they kept doing a good job at what they were doing. So they'd get promoted until they got to a point where they didn't do such a good job anymore. And then they didn't get demoted. They just stayed there. So the idea is the whole organization would be filled with people at their level of incompetence.
Yeah. And it's all kind of froth at the top of this pool.
Right. Yeah. So we're in like a vat of beer. If you're a home brewer like I am. So
yeah, you totally get it. Yeah. It's interesting, and you're absolutely right. But eventually is what my experience has been with that type of a scenario is everyone can see those challenged leaders, the best way, the polite way to put it, and seeing, well, how is that person getting promoted? Why is that person getting promoted? And I have to work my tail off just to get to the next level, and I'm still not going to get there. It causes a lot of dissent and anger and frustration. Right. So the question I have for you then is, what can new leaders do about that? How can they? What's their best way to live within that environment?
I would say that, especially when you have, competitive situations, and we have co-opetition is the word, where we cooperate, but we also compete, right? And we all cooperate, work together to accomplish the mission, but we also are competing for promotion or, better efficiency reports or whatnot. The trick is, I think, to always focus on the mission. And if you stay focused on the mission rather than on yourself, that will really come out. And if you may be working for a really inept manager, a really inept leader who won't recognize that, in which case, time to find a new position, a new opportunity. You really have to be kind of aware of what your situation is, and what other people are doing around you, and especially above you, I guess, in the hierarchy. So you really need to focus on being aware. Have you ever heard the term the OODA loop?
I don't think I have.
The OODA loop is it was actually invented by an Air Force officer, and talking about air-to-air combat, and it was adopted with great relish by the Marine Corps, oddly enough, who like to call us the chair force. But at any rate, the OODA loop is observe, orient, decide, act. And the idea is you're constantly in that mode of observing, orienting, or thinking, understanding your what's going on, deciding what to do, and then acting. And that's a constant process. And what happens in a disruptive situation, what's disruptive is somebody's disrupting that OODA loop. They're causing a break in that what you expect to happen. I go into work and half of the team has quit. No, had no idea, or they got reassigned, and here's your new troops or whatnot. And so you've got your OODA, what you were expecting for that day is now just totally disrupted. It's gone. And you have to observe, understand the situation, orient on what's the new situation, decide what to do, and then act and not freeze. Right. So you've got.
Oh no, you go. I cut you off.
No, you've got it's the fight, flight, or freeze. There's three states there when your adrenaline's high, right? And that freeze is not what you want.
No, exactly.
Either
I cut you off.
no, that's where in that context you have to fight through what that situation is if you're not going to run away.
And that's the thing, and it's hard quite often to decide if you're not going to fight or flight because it's we're genetically predisposed to survive, and depending on what that is, and depending on the situation, it can be very easy to want to run away and go away from that. It seems to me that it would be really good for new leaders to remember that the requirement to be flexible and have a sense of agility to be able to keep going and moving around, understanding that it's not necessarily going to be the straightest path, the quickest way to get to whatever the objective may be, literally and figuratively. Does that make any sense at all?
Oh, hello there. It's Glenn, the voiceover artist. And if you're hearing me, that means we're at the midpoint of this episode. Do you have an idea for an episode that you feel is vital for emerging leaders? Leave the idea in the comments section, and if your topic is chosen, you will have the opportunity to join us as a co-host during the recording session. So, drop us a note and let's talk. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you, and if you feel we've earned it, please tell your friends and leave a review to help us grow our following. And now, back to the show.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, in the software business these days, agile processes are the rage. I take like anything, you have to take some of that with a grain of salt. There's no perfect process and all that, but the nice thing about agile processes is it identifies a method of interacting with your environment where you expect change to happen. You expect disruption to occur. So you don't plan too far ahead. Like we used to say, a battle plan survives everything except first contact with the enemy. So the same thing with business plan. Business plan survives everything except first contact with competition. You have to understand and be ready and not be married to your previous ideas, but stay flexible, stay observing. And I said that when you say observe, the observation is unbiased, needs to be unbiased. If you have a biased observer, they only see things through their lens, through their rose-colored glasses or whatnot, and they will miss things because they don't conform to their preconceived ideas. So we have to keep an open mind and strive to be ready to make new decisions, different decisions, and choose differently when the situation warrants.
I completely agree with you. And I also was thinking in the other sense of that, when as the leader of a team, it's important to be open to those new ideas, not just this is the way we've always done these things. Be open to all the different ideas that are out there and take the time to truly look at them all. Like you said, observe without bias, take it in without bias, make some choices, and then go from there. And if the opportunity allows for that, not rush through the choices. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah. And always be learning. Constantly. The more and better you can learn. And learning often means listening, and being able to listen well and listen effectively to what people are telling you, and not not allow your preconceived notions to prevent you from hearing what they're telling you. Yeah, so I agree. It's you have to always be ready to learn new things. That's one of the whole point of the book that I wrote was dealt with the people who were kind of living this fog of ignorance about what it was they were trying to lead. And the problem is that you don't know what you don't know, right? And they don't know what they don't know. They have to always be on the lookout for information, new information about what it is they're trying to lead, and so that they can discover what the gaps, what is the knowledge that it is that they're lacking. What are the key factors about arming an aircraft you need to know in order to lead that team? You don't need to know the nitty-gritty details of everything that needs to be done, but you have to know what it takes in terms of effort, what it takes in terms of mental discipline, how long you can expect a job to take, and that sort of thing. So that is the level of understanding. And you always have to be scanning, you always have to be perceiving in order to get that. Then you understand what your gaps in knowledge are, then you can selectively fill them in. So, I picked the hardest possible thing to try to train people on, which is you don't know what problem you have yet. So I'm going to help you solve that.
Yeah. Let's first identify that problem. I like to, in my mind, I envision it as pretty much every sport. In every sport, one of the big things you get told is to not be standing around with your feet flat in the ground. Be on your toes, be ready to be going, be nimble, be ready to adjust whichever direction you need to go at a moment's notice, but also be on the whole time, using the OODA loop to scan your surroundings and pay attention to what's happening and then react as required. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I up to a few years ago, I was playing hockey. Yes, we play hockey in Texas. The Dallas Stars are doing pretry well this year.
I don't want to talk about it. Ottawa Senators.
You're gonna have trouble. Anybody's gonna have trouble getting past the Bruins this year, but in the East, yeah,
it's gonna be tough, no matter who they are.
But the interesting thing, the real interesting thing that happened to me, and it happened to me just one time only, and I was being coached by a former Dallas Star. I was he had a class. It wasn't an individual, but it was a class coaching kind of situation. I asked him about this. I said, one day I picked up the puck deep in my own end. I was a defenseman, and I grabbed the puck off the end boards and I turned up ice and started skating. And I said, everybody else was like cones, and I was just skating up the ice, going around everything. I said. And it was like everything was slowed down, and Brett Severin said, "Oh, you were thinking at the speed of the game." He said that's the zone, that's where you want to be, and that's where. And in fact, Josh Waitzkin talks about this in his book about learning as well, and where he was doing this in Tai Chi, in push hands, which is a martial arts form of Tai Chi, where everything's just slowed down. Time just kind of slowed down, and he was ahead of what was going on. And I think that's kind of the zone people want to be in if you're going to lead in even in business and things like that. You need to be thinking at the speed of the game, and that's important.
I completely agree. And I guess the question I have for you then is do you have any types of practical advice or tips that could help someone get into that zone?
Yeah, I would like to be able to be in that zone at will, so to speak. I like to do lots of things at will. I don't like the expression fire at will, but other than that.
Oh, terrible. Terrible.
Yeah,
so bad, but it's good.
I know that. See, you don't get dad jokes with me, or even granddad jokes. It's great granddad jokes with me. So that's
wow.
Yeah.
Well, if to be fair, you'd never know it. You don't look great granddad age, so you're in good shape. You're doing well.
Thanks a lot. Well, and part of that is to really answer your question, though, to give some practical advice is for people to really begin with, I think I mentioned this earlier, beginner's mind, where you're open. The beginner's mind is to really, when you're starting something new and you're just learning it, you don't have your ego involved. You don't have you're just learning, and it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to fail. It's okay to get up, dust yourself off, and try again. When I was just learning how to play hockey, I would put on all my gear and I would skate beyond the limits of my ability to skate, which means I would end up falling down and slamming into the end boards. But because I was I mean, I'd grown up skating as a youth in Wisconsin, but I hadn't been on skates in like 20 years. So it was, but you have to be willing to make a mistake. You have to be willing to learn. And that is the single most important thing, I think, for new leaders, to have that open mind, but also maintain their authority. So you can get into this, you can slip into a mode where you realize you don't know everything. You're still in charge. You're still accountable. You're still responsible for the outcome. And you can't delegate that. You can't push that down the chain and say, well, yeah, but they should have known what they were doing. It's like, well, even though you are not the expert, you don't necessarily know all the tactical details of what they should have been doing. It's your responsibility to ensure, as the leader, that the job is getting done and getting done correctly. Figuring out how to measure that when you don't know all of the intricacies and the details, you have to find people at the detail level that you trust and that will work with you in order to get the information you need to effectively lead them.
And that's a big part of that, is being open to all of the different things, knowing you're going to make mistakes. And one of the way, in my opinion, one of the ways to own that authority you were speaking of is to know that you're going to make mistakes, admit you make mistakes, and then don't try and hide the fact when you've made a mistake. Because let's be clear, all of us will make mistakes. Doesn't matter how great we are, we think we're doing, errors will happen. Right. And I think there's a lot to be said for knowing the mistakes are going to happen and being okay with the mistakes. And if I could use an example, when I was learning French, the military put me on this year-long French course, full-time deal. It was fantastic. I'm very lucky. And the first few months of the course, and it's a very humbling experience. And I think it's actually relevant to this episode, in that I went from being an expert in my technical field to not being able to string together a 5-word sentence, and literally overnight. And that's a humbling experience to go through.
Yes.
And so fortunately I was in my group. We're all fumbling through this together. And the first few months of the course, I was afraid we were living near Quebec and stuff. So I was very shy and very resistant to speaking French to other Francophones, because I knew if French was going to be wrong, and I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't want to waste their time, all of the imposter syndrome things. And then one day I remember I was going through the drive-through to get a coffee, and I just, for whatever reason, something clicked in my head, and I was like, I'm going to screw this up. I'm very likely going to say something wrong, and that's okay. And from that point on, I released myself of the tension of having to carry those mistakes with me, because they were going to happen. And that made me actually really improve my French capacity to learn that much better, because I was open to the mistakes. And that was a huge deal for me. Does that make sense at all?
Oh yeah. And it's in anything where you're performing, and let's say speaking a new language is performing in a sense, but performing as far as playing a sport, or singing choral music, or playing chess, or working in business or whatnot. You're going to make mistakes, and it's one of those things of mental toughness, right? Where you have to realize that you're going to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you may hurt somebody, may hurt yourself or others. You may hurt somebody you love and care about. And you have to still make the decisions anyway. You still have to do that. You can't defer that. You can't not do that. And if you don't have that mental toughness, then you will always cower. and slink away and not, and it's not just even being a leader. It's not being alive at that point. Where if you don't have the mental toughness to make the call, to make a decision, you're just barely, you're just taking up space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something you and I had spoken about earlier, is that learning to learn, the idea that we had to be open to learning the things that we needed to learn to do what it is we're going to do. There's a lot of power in that, and recognizing that, because as another topic you and I spoke about, we talked about finding the relevant gaps to things, and those are filling in those little holes and then creating that nice even layer to help us be able to go forward. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah. That's the discovery part, to figure out what are the holes in the knowledge. What don't you know, and how much of what you don't know do you need to fill in? Because you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know all of it, right? But you need to know the relevant parts of it. And then once you discover the relevant parts that are the gaps in knowledge, then you fill them in. And then you become more complete as a leader, or as a manager or whatnot. But it's observing, learning, listening, and perceiving what it is that you don't know. And sometimes you have to get some coaching. That's critical in a lot of cases. To improve, you're either going to self-coach, which is possible to do. It's you go and get books and learn and troll the internet, and there's a wealth of information out there right now. There's so much information that the signal to noise ratio basically sucks. That it's hard to find the signal for all the noise that's out there. That's where somebody who's coaching can say, okay, this is relevant, this is important, this is what you don't know, basically. And that's what I did with helping those folks that were non-technical SaaS founders. They didn't know, they were left kind of stuck holding the bag. They had a system that had been built. It mostly worked, and although it had significant problems, but they didn't have enough money to keep a staff around. So they were down to like one part-time developer, and themselves trying to support this product that had customers who were relying on it. And now you have this obligation that you feel and have to that set of customers. So they were in a tough situation. So I spent the time coaching them on what it takes to develop software well, that can be sustained and that can be managed and maintained over a course of time, and improved so that the customers would continue to benefit from it. And but that's the function I served for them, to help them understand what it was they would need to do, where they would need to look for people to help them to do the specific tasks that were still necessary. But yeah, oftentimes you need a coach, you need somebody, a mentor, somebody who either formally or informally, who can help you understand where your gaps are.
And that's huge, because this, the whole point of this episode is, quite often we don't know where the gaps are. We don't know what we're missing because we can't see it. And quite often, I think that in the new roles, especially for outside of our comfort zone, it's all, I don't want to say impossible, I don't like that word, but it's very difficult to allow ourselves the ability to even recognize that we don't know something. We would quite often, I think people feel the pressure to just do something.
Right.
Something that doesn't have to be right. Just do something. Look like you're acting, look like you're doing something. And that rush causes a lot of problems.
Yes, absolutely. That is just don't think, do. Well, that doesn't really work in practice, right? Observe, orient, decide, act, and then feedback. What went well, and that's what we do. Of course, it's part of that agile process. Is use, and the nice thing about agile methods, and I run my business using agile methods, by the way. So our businesses. So we go through and we use 3-week sprints. where we go for 3 weeks and then we do a review. What went well, did everything that we want to get accomplished? What went well? What could have gone better? What are our objectives for the next sprint? How are we going to, and all within the context of what any overriding initiatives might be strategically. So you have a strategic layer of goals and things like that you need to try to accomplish, and then the tactics are done, on a sprint kind of basis. We always say the strategy determines tactics and vice versa. So part of the problem that you can have as a leader, if you're trying to evolve or develop a strategy, is if you don't understand the tactics and you don't understand the tactical realities, your strategy could very well be flawed because those tactics influence the strategy. That's where you need the input from the troops in the field, or the worker, the people that are actually doing the job, on the tactics, and run the strategy by them so that they have input into it and can get some buy-in into it. Yeah, we're all going to commit to this strategic objective, and we're going to make the tactics work so that happens. So that's the other part of being an effective leader. When you're not necessarily completely conversant with all the tactics, you didn't come up through all of those tactics, that you listen to them, you have them buy in and contribute to developing the overall strategy.
So what I'm thinking of is the quote. I love quotes, and one of my favorite quotes that I've heard is "Nothing about us without us." And while this particular quote comes from a gentleman named James Charlton rather, and he's talking about disability oppression, it does seem relevant to this conversation in that talking to the team to understand what is needed is there, because ultimately it's the team members that are going to be enacting whatever the rules are laid out. It's the team leader's responsibility to make sure they're followed. But so who's really doing this? Whose boots are on the ground doing this? Nothing about us without us. Those are the folks that we need to know. And that's honestly, that also helps with buy-in. That helps with trust, symmetry, synergy, all the different fancy words. All of that comes together, and it's really truly is something that allows someone who may be a non-technical expert to show, hey, I don't know everything about everything in this particular thing, this field, but I can lead you because I'm going to sit and take the time to listen and hear you and use that information to make a wise, informed decision.
Right. And there it's interesting actually, sometimes, as a leader, going through the amount of education that I've subjected myself to, the one thing you learn, one thing you do is you learn how to learn. The second is you learn how to analyze and understand what's going on. And what has happened to me sometimes in the past is, so you have to be kind of careful and understand the people, not just the tactics, but the people that you're dealing with. From time to time, I will get pushback in the form of, I'm not using necessarily, even with my degrees, I'm not necessarily using the exactly right, precise technical term that the technologist is working on the job would use. So the pushback I get is this feigned, I don't understand what you're talking about. And it's like, and it's at that moment that a little bit more direct, you have to kind of drop we're all team members here, and drop the hammer basically and say, yes, but I'm the team lead and you know what I meant. I know you know what I meant.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes people are going to be poking. They're going to expect that, oh, you're the leader, you know these things. It's okay to push back. It's all right to defend yourself, and you don't have to take it just because someone is not that technical expert. It really is all right. Yeah.
Yeah. You really have to do that. And otherwise you'll get, you'll get walked on.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. And I know for myself, when I was in that first formal leadership role with those two senior guys on the fighter base, I got walked on, and I let it happen, and I'm okay with admitting that. One of the guys is, well, they're both really good friends of mine, but their combined experience, I was intimidated by them. They're not gone. They're very smart guys, and I had a hard time pushing myself. I had to let myself get comfortable to being in the role of being the leader. And then once I got the idea of that, I was able to kind of branch out, but that took a while. And that time is important, but at the same token, time is money. And in this particular, well, not in the military, time is getting planes out, but you get the idea. It adds up, and there's a trickle down effect, but you get there. I figured it out. I got there. We're still having a conversation.
Yeah, that's good. And that happens. And it's take a line from the Godfather. It's business, not personal. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I had a subordinate who said, I'm going to put myself on furlough until you do something. And I said, no, you're not. You can either quit without notice, or you can go back to your job. You quit without notice. And he was a crucial key team member, as a matter of fact. But we survived.
Yeah.
And then there's the other takeaway from that is you do not want to build a team that is dependent on one person. And you have to make sure that you manage your risk. It's not just somebody, doing an ultimatum or something like that, and then throwing down a gauntlet. It's we in the software business, we talk about it, the bus syndrome. Somebody gets hit by a bus. If that's the one person that knows how to do something, now you're in trouble. So you have to make sure that the knowledge is spread out enough so that enough people know what to do, so that you're not at risk of losing any one person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. We've had a great conversation. We've chatted for a half an hour about this, if you can believe it already. Well, listen, we really have had a fantastic conversation, and I'm quite confident that people are going to want to hear more about you and hear from you and maybe engage you in your services. If people want to do that, how can they do that?
Oh, well, I think probably the easiest way is to drop a comment on my webpage. So it's www.drwill, that's drwill.co, just co, not com. There's another drwill.com, that's not me. So drwill.co, and there's a comment thing at the bottom of the page. Just drop a note in there, or you can, if they wanted to, like a 15-minute free, no pitch consult. So this is they can lay out their ideas and their thoughts and challenges, and I can give them, 10, 15 minutes of my best thinking around that. And that would be at spl.drwill.co/free consult. That's FREE consult, CONSULT. And those would be the easiest ways to do it. There are links in all of my social media, podcast, vlog, blah, 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 et cetera. So any of that stuff will all get back to me.
Fantastic. And of course, I'll have links to all those different shows and contact information inside these show notes. And with that, I can't thank you enough for your time today. This has been fantastic. It's just a real pleasure. Oh, I do need to tell you, I did know what the do line was many years ago. My father was a refrigeration and maintenance technician in the Canadian Air Force, and one of his primary specialty was to manage the coolant system on those big radar dishes you were talking about. So I lived in some interesting remote locations as a young kid.
Up in the Arctic Circle. Yes. Wow.
All over. Yeah, it was fun.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I've enjoyed it a lot, Simon. It's been a very great conversation. And when we do ever have a chance to actually get together, it'd be great to sit down, have a beer, and kick back and chew over some old times.
I can't wait to do that. Thanks so much.
Okay. You take care.
Well, that's a wrap from the front. In this episode, we talked about knowing what you don't know. And let's be honest, as leaders, quite often we're going to be in a role and in the position where we don't know what we don't know. We need to remember that it's a co-opetition where we're working together, but we're also competing against each other and with each other, and knowing when how to do that. The biggest thing we have to remember is to observe without bias, to take the time and understand that strategy determines our tactics and the tactics influence the strategies. Everything is connected. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, leadership without passion limits the depth of your vision.
Never miss an episode by following us on all of your favorite feeds. While you're there, please consider leaving an episode review and let us know what topics you would like to hear about. Be sure to join us next week with your host, Simon Cardinal, for another episode of Trench Leadership, a podcast from the front, produced by iGlen Studios, music provided by Ashamal of Music.